A4 Pacifics have always been a firm favourite of mine, and therefore it's no surprise that I've got quite a lot. A big hello to you! It is so great to see you, and I hope I find you well. I'm Jenny Kirk, welcome you up here to Weir Yard, and today we're going to be having another delve into my locomotive fleet. And this is off the back of some videos that I've been doing where I show you all of a particular type of locomotive that I've got in my collection and just talk you through them. And certainly the Class 25 video is one that we did recently, and before that we also did an All the Terriers video, which proved especially popular with people who maybe spotted liveries that they didn't even know had been released. And I know that at Worley I bumped into a couple of people who were actually on a hunt for terriers off the back of that video and was able to hook one of them up with the LBSCR Burnt Umber liveried version. So really glad that worked out for them. We've also done a video on all of the pugs that I've got, the ex-Lancashire and Yorkshire Puggy Poos. Do really love that type of locomotive, but I did have a quick look back through and I couldn't see a video where I'd done all of my A4 Pacifics. Now we did do a comparison video, what's the difference between the newest Hornby and the newest Bachmann tooled models of those, but I couldn't see anywhere that I'd done all of my A4 Pacifics. So it seemed like a little bit of an open goal to get them all out and take a good close look today. And of course throughout this video, if you want to share with me your memories perhaps of childhood A4 Pacifics, or even memories of the real ones, or tell me about what you've got in your collection as well, then do leave a comment down below. It's always great to hear from you. And today's video comes, as always, in association with Trainomatic, makers of DCT decoders and accessories that are designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. Find the full range available to order now at tramfabrique.co.uk. Additional support comes from Rocar Prototype Models, where detail, accuracy and value for money go hand in hand. With their debut model of SafePack auto racks wowing model railroaders alike, now is your chance to order these in road names and configurations to accurately reproduce auto rack workings from 1974 to the present day on your model railroad. Order today from rocarmodels.com and see the full range for yourself. So without further ado, come with me and let's take a look through all of the A4s that I've got in my collection. And I will point out that there's a few here that you will have never really seen on the channel. I've actually delved back into my childhood models and brought a few of them out as well. So come with me and let's see what I've got. A4 Pacifics have always been a firm favourite of mine, and therefore it's no surprise that I've got quite a lot. And the first one I'm going to show you from my collection is this one in the L&ER Garter Blue as number 4483 Kingfisher. Now this is one of the Hornby models, but it's the one where the tender can be separated from the locomotive, but it's locomotive drive with an 8-pin socket in the locomotive itself, so this has been DCC fitted, although it's not a main range quality model, although I think that these do still have a great level of detail, and I'm still more than happy to pick these up second hand in identities that I don't already have. This features the full streamlining valances. These were removed as an economy measure during the war to make it easier to access the valve gear for maintenance, and they were never reinstated in full afterwards. So this is a A4 which is very much in the pre-war guise. It is a lovely model. The Garter Blue is actually quite reminiscent of the Sir Nigel Gresley that I had as a child, which I do still have, but a spoiler alert for you, it's not going to feature in this video because it's currently in a display cabinet at my father's house. So It's not one which I can easily show you at this time, but Kingfisher certainly harks back to those childhood memories of Hornby 00. It's not one that actually gets run pretty much ever on Wear Yard, and not entirely sure why. It's just, I guess it's got tucked to the back, and there are other liveries that I tend to prefer. But it is a really eye-catching livery. We've got these sort of plum-coloured wheels as well, and it really does stand out. It features the corridor connection tenders for the non-stop running, and you can see the moulding in the top there for the corridor, which ran all the way down the side so that the crews could change over on the move. Although you had to be quite skinny because those corridors certainly didn't provide a huge amount of space for the more rotund of us. But that's the first of my A4 collection. It's also the only one that I've got in the pre-BR liveries, and I've gone very, very heavily towards the BR liveried versions after this, and including as well my childhood collection. The Sir Nigel Gresley was the only one which was done in this lovely garter blue livery, with all of the others being in a BR green. The next one I'm going to show you is actually the first more modern period A4 that I bought, and this is when I got back into modelling. I picked this up second hand from a model shop, Dominion of New Zealand, number 60013, and we've got that crest underneath as well for New Zealand, which is quite a nice little touch on some of these A4s that were named for countries rather than after birds. Now, Dominion of New Zealand is one that I do remember being a child. It always fascinated me looking in books and seeing A4s that weren't the well-known A4s, and certainly Dominion of New Zealand was one of the earlier ones that I remember seeing a photograph of and going, oh wow, there's some quite unusual ones. Of course, there were, 35 with 34 surviving through to BR days. So, of course, there were always going to be quite a few that were unknown to me. This is a much earlier Bachmann tooling, and it features split chassis, but I've actually been able to DCC fit this locomotive. It was a bit tough, but I did feel that it was touch and go, but it was worth the effort to update it for DCC running into my collection, and certainly it does kind of hold its own. And until I find a Dominion of New Zealand with a more modern tooling at a very favourable price, it remains the example of this particular name and running number in my collection. This features the non-corridor tender, so we're just looking there with the flat back, and some of the A4s had this, some didn't. And you can see there's none of that tender corridor going through, which does give them, I guess, a little bit more coal and water capacity. The next model that I got here is Empire of India, and this is actually quite a recent acquisition. And it's a Hornby model, but it's not the most current release, so it's got the detachable tender. I actually quite like this version. It's really easy for maintenance purposes, plus you still got the advantage of being able to DCC fit it. And there is enough space to sound fit them with a degree of ease. Now, the tender itself is, again, a non-corridor version, and the locomotive, though, we've got those cut-out valances, and actually this was done quite sympathetically, so you can see that the curves are still quite sweeping, and they work out quite well, and actually the locomotive doesn't look poor for the process of doing that. We also get all of the detail of the wheels and the valve gear, which we didn't get with the full valanced version, and I do actually quite like this. Empire of India is another one of the somewhat more unusual identities. Well, for me at least, we've got the double chimney, and this model has actually been sound and smoke fitted, so it's a little bit unusual. A little bit temperamental, but I picked it up for a really, really good price and just couldn't ignore it. Although I've got no real intentions of using the smoke. It's also had firebox flicker added. Now that is something which I do quite like, and there is a crew in here, so it was purchased second hand, but certainly I've benefited from somebody's actually quite careful work at upgrading this model. I often wonder whether Empire of India, along with Dominion of New Zealand and Commonwealth of Australia, were three A4s which could have been saved but weren't, on the basis that Dominion of Canada was offered to Canada and they took BR up on the offer. Dwight D. Eisenhower, again for similar reasons, was given to America, and I believe certainly Commonwealth of Australia was offered to the respective country, and they turned it down on the grounds of shipping costs. And I do wonder whether the same offer was made to New Zealand and maybe even India, and for whatever reason was never taken up. But certainly for the first three of the locomotives in my collection, I'm really quite pleased with these, although against the light you can see Empire of India has been renumbered and we've got the crest underneath as well. A little bit of a shame that that shines, but certainly it is a really nice job. The next one that I want to show you is, again, this is a Hornby model, but it's the later version, and we've got this permanently coupled tender drawbar with the wires going across, and what that actually means is we've got a DCC socket in the tender and quite a lot of room to be able to sound fit this model. Its identity is Miles Beaver, and it's one of the more recent releases from Hornby. Indeed, we did a full review on this model, number 60026, and it did score really, really well. Now, Hornby has always considered the A4 to be one of their flagship models, and consequently it's been retooled, probably with the exception of the Princess Royals, Princess Coronations, more times than any other model, to keep it bang up to date. And I must admit that I do really like this version and the previous version, which I've shown you a couple of. I think that they're both good enough that I will still quite happily pick up either second hand to be able to augment my fleet. And I suspect that eventually I'm going to reach a point where I end up with one of every A4, and where I go from there, I'm not really quite sure. The next locomotive, we're going back to Bachmann on this, and I've got Sir Nigel Gresley because, well, we'd be rather lacking if we didn't have a Sir Nigel Gresley. Childhood memories for me, as I said before, had that Hornby 00 model. But we've got it in the BR Experimental Blue. It's the only A4 I've got in this particular experimental livery. But you can see it really does look amazing. Now, the tender itself, there's no electrical connection whatsoever. It can be disentangled from the locomotive, although the locomotive itself does feature the 8-pin DCC socket, and these are perfectly acceptable. I actually do actively search these out in liveries which I don't already have. So 60007, got that lovely little crest in the middle, and there on the end, Sir Nigel Gresley. This is one of the preserved A4s that does survive to this day, and I'm really, really pleased to have it in experimental blue. Certainly a livery which I would take great steps to get one in my collection in this livery again. The next locomotive that I have is this is the Hornby, again as Merlin. But we've got a slightly different arrangement between tender and locomotive. Once again, we've got the socket in the tender for the DCC, but this isn't secured, and I'm really, really glad that Hornby very, very quickly added that second screw. It did make a big difference to avoiding straining those wires. So this is pretty much the crossover period. And actually, one of the things that I didn't show you, I perhaps should have done, is that these have got the disc wheels, whereas Empire of India, she's got spoked wheels on a tender, which is something just a little bit different, and I'm not sure whether this is aftermarket or whether some of the A4s did have spoked wheels on their tenders, but just a little quirk there, which is quite different from the bulk of the A4s which I've seen, and certainly as we go through, it's I'm going to keep an eye out and see if there are any others which have the spoked tender wheels. Now, Merlin is one which is one of 4 A4s, I believe, which received the experimental purple livery, although whilst I have seen evidence that she may have been done as a special commission for a retailer in that livery, the price I saw quoted on eBay was horrendously high, so I've not been able to get it in that rather pretty livery, but certainly more than happy to get her in the BR green with the late crest on the tender, which I don't mind actually. Between the late and early crest, I tend to treat them as interchangeable. The next locomotive I've got here is 60031, and this is Golden Plover. Now, Golden Plover is a name which I struggled with initially. It's not pronounced as it's spelt, Golden Plover. It's a bird, and it's pronounced Golden Plover. The name is a little bit of a crossover between the bird naming convention that was prevalent on the A4s, and there were a couple of locomotives built for the Leeds services which had names to do with the wool trade but which featured golden in. So we had Golden Fleece and Golden Shuttle, but Golden Plover is very firmly in the bird camp. Again, we've got that nice easy tender drawbar array, which actually I think is one of the best. It's certainly really easy and not prone to any damage, and you can pick these up for, I've seen them second hand boxed for anywhere down to £50 easily, and at that price it really is a case of it would be rude not to. Now, Golden Plover has seen a lot of use. You can see that slight yellowing on the tyres through extensive running, but she's been bulletproof reliable, and certainly I've been very, very pleased adding this model to my collection. The next locomotive is Gilman. Again, she came second-hand the week after, actually, from the same shop that Golden Plover came from. Went back in there and couldn't believe my luck. Gilman, again, at a really great price, and it was an A4 I didn't have. So I thought, you know what, I'm going with that. Again, she's got the slightly yellowed golden wheels from having been run an awful lot. She has been one of the stalwarts of my A4 fleet, and certainly Golden Plover and Guillemot have done more than their fair share of running. We've got that single blast pipe at the front, which is indicative of the locomotives before some of them received the updates. And we've got the standard non-corridor tender as well. Turning her round, again, it's pretty much a standard A4 livery, and it just shows that these models are a dead cert bread and butter model certainly for Hornby, and I'd be surprised in any year if they didn't bring out an A4, because quite frankly these are the Hornby signature model. The next one from my collection is Andrew K McCosh. Again, another somewhat more unusual example, 60003, with the late crest on there, and we've also got the tender with the corridor connection. This one came as part of a set, the Northumberland, and I bought it as the set for the coaches as much as for the locomotive. But it's the only time I've ever seen Andrew K McCosh released in model form from Hornby. They may have done her a long time in the past, but certainly I'm not aware of it. And it does seem a bit weird calling a locomotive her with the name Andrew K McCosh. But locomotives are always female, despite what the name might be on the side. It's just one of those conventions. Ships, very much the same as well. Again, bread and butter model from Hornby, and one which is actually quite easy to find. If you find the Northumberland set, it's this locomotive, 3 of the superb Gresleys in the blood and custard livery, and they also do a coach pack to give you 3 further coaches, so that you then have a really nice train to pull behind Andrew K McCosh. And I did manage to get both the expansion and the original. Along with Sir Nigel Gresley, the other A4 that no collection would be complete without is number 60022 Mallard, and this is the record-breaking locomotive, which in turn has been preserved as part of the National Collection. Resplendent here in a BR livery, certainly one which from Hornby, it does get released quite a lot. This is the particular version again that I've said before, with that actually really quite helpful tender connection. Corridor tender connection on there, the double blast pipe, and again, just a bread and butter run-of-the-mill model from Hornby, but one which I'm really glad to have in my collection. Now, the last of the, what I'm going to call the modern tooled versions, is Samara Wilson, and this is a Bachmann model. Number 60002, Samara Wilson was one of a slew of A4s, which after Sir Nigel Gresley, the locomotive that is, was named after the person, a number of the A4s were renamed after people like directors of the London and North Eastern Railway Company, usually usurping bird names, and I can't for the life of me remember which names were originally assigned to any of these, but certainly even after the nationalisation, they retained these names. A little bit unusual, I guess, for BR locomotives to carry names of living people who weren't actually royalty, but there we go. She's got the non-corridor tender, and certainly this particular era of Bachmann locomotives, they've got the 8-pin socket in the locomotive, that centre sprung front bogie. Always worth adding to the collection when I find one, which I don't have. And that completes the more modern locomotives in my collection. And I've got 2 more A4s to show you. Now, it should be 4, but as I've kind of hinted before, some of these are at my parents' house in the custodianship of my father. And this, I alluded to Golden Fleece as one of a pair built for the Leeds service, but she was also 60030. She was released as originally the 2-rail version of the A4 when the 2-rail range was released. And this rather tired example, the tender's all right, but it is actually the wrong tender. The locomotive, somebody has put it upon themselves long before I got hold of it, to coat it in a layer of varnish, which has gone yellow and horrible, which at some point I need to work out how to remove the varnish without damaging the paint underneath. But she's one of 2. The other one is at my parents' house in much better condition with her proper chassis, which would feature plastic wheels on the bogies and nickel-silver drive wheels. Although the plastic wheels are something of a albatross insofar as they do attract a lot of muck. But quite a heavy locomotive, very crude by modern standards, but she is, there you can see the 3-rail pickups. She is the penultimate A4 in my collection that I've got here to show you. And that, of course, leaves as the final A4, Silver King. And again, this is one of 2 that I have in my collection. The other one is at my father's in a display cabinet. But as these were duplicates, they've made their way here, and certainly much treasured models. Now, Silver King you do occasionally see in some videos where I need a 3-rail locomotive to demonstrate things like rolling roads. But I have been bugging Hornby for a long time, and yes, I do have Simon Kohler's email address, and I do drop him emails about this from time to time, and he's probably sick of it. But I really want Silver King to be released in this livery because this is childhood nostalgia for a lot of people, myself included. And I still remember that Christmas when the Silver King model in the early 80s, by then second-hand at least once, possibly multiple times, rocked up, and that was the first introduction that I had to tender locomotives in the Hornby 00 range. In fact, it was the first locomotive I was bought, which was not part of my father's original collection. So it was quite a moment to have this added to the collection that we had, that went on to become quite big and which cemented my love of model railways. So I always have a soft spot for 60016 Silver King. But that's all of the A4s that I've got here to show you, and I'm sure you'll agree it is quite an impressive collection, but I dare say there will be a lot more turning up over the next few years. Well, I hope you really enjoyed today's video and found it informative too. And certainly I really enjoyed going through all of those A4 Pacifics and showing you each and every one that I've got in my collection, including those two little gems from childhood, which are still treasured to this day. Of course, they don't run here on Weir Yard, but they do live in display cabinets downstairs and certainly do have a pride of place. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments section down below about any of your A4 collections, maybe memories of the real things. It's always great to hear from you too. And please tickle the like button, share this video and subscribe to the channel to be the first to know about new videos as and when they go up. And you can also pick up that exclusive Monday Club wagon, which is available to order with confidence through Rails of Sheffield, the link in the description box down below. But do hurry, they are selling out quickly, and the latest update from KR Models is that they will be available sometime in March this year, 2023. So do hurry, otherwise they will sell out, and if they're anything like the first Monday Club commission, they proved exceptionally popular and are now, they're like gold dust, you can't find them. But until next time, this is me, Jenny Kirk, saying you take great care of yourself. Happy modelling, bye for now. Today's video is sponsored by Trainomatic, makers of DCC decoders designed to be fully compatible with every manufacturer's locomotive. Visit train-o-matic.com to browse the full range and see what they've got suitable for you. Additional support comes from Rocar Prototype Models, where detail, accuracy and value for money go hand in hand. With their debut model of SafePack auto racks wowing model railroaders alike, now is your chance to order these in road names and configurations to accurately reproduce auto rack workings from 1974 to the present day on your model railroad. Order today from rocarmodels.com and see the full range for yourself. I'd like to send out a huge thanks to everybody who supports me on Patreon, and an extra special huge thanks goes out to Anthony Kidson, Offshore Allen, Michael Lockie, Helen Sink, Gary Lewis, David Quinn, Sparky 107107, George Botterini, Chris Moss, Robert Steers, Sam Yates, Dale Williams, John N from NC, NYMRish, Jonathan Foster, Peter, Clifford Ison, Larry W. Grant, NI Railways 4000 class, Ian Coulson, Alan Dickerson, Eddie Popper, Karen Nichol, Medwin Williams, Crossways Point Junction, 3B Rail, Jennifer Horton, and James Beckett. Thank you. Without you guys, I couldn't do this.